Good morning. Happy Saturday. Yesterday I covered a lot, went pretty fast. Thought I might do a little bit of that again before we start moving forward on our next topic. So, real estate. And if you're going to be an investor where you hold properties, I talked about flipper, I talked about builder. I don't know as much about those things, but we did... at one of the events that I was at, they had a real estate investor there that was the flipper, and that's where I saw how you do the model where you have a team and you buy in bulk, and clearly that was something that was a great system. But I talked to you about what about if you allowed the people who rent from you to pay down the debt or increase the equity in the property, and then you cash money out and then use that to go into the stock market. So let me explain a little bit better about what I meant. So the house that I'm in, I live in the state of Illinois, and the state of Illinois was a blue state, so it got penalized by the new tax laws. So under the new tax laws, we can only deduct up to $10,000 of real estate taxes and mortgage interest. Illinois is one of those states that relies on property taxes as the way to fund its educational system, so we tend to have higher property taxes. Although Wisconsin has even higher property taxes than us. So if you own your house, it used to be that you could deduct property taxes no matter how much that is, and you could deduct your mortgage interest no matter how much that is. And I mean, like if you live in Northbrook, your property taxes could be $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. I mean, your house could be worth a couple of $1 million, and their local schools are unbelievable, so your property taxes could be that high. Now, that's the case if you own the house individually. But if the house sits in a corporation, the corporation can deduct all of the taxes and all of the insurance and all of the interest. So Grant Cardone will tell you, I don't own the property that I live in, I rent it. Well, he's telling you the truth. He rents it, but he actually rents it from himself. And what I mean by that is his company, Cardone Capital, owns the property. And he doesn't use it to, there's no loan against it, but he uses it for borrowing purposes. He uses it for collateral towards the amount of money that he borrows to purchase new properties. But the real genius is by putting that property into that company, he gets to deduct everything. So I have a real estate company. MEI is the name of my real estate company. And my properties are in that real estate company, so that way all of the interest, all of the taxes, all of that, which, there's a big difference between my real estate taxes are about, I think $14,000, $15,000, and, mortgage interest on the property, let's say you had a $500,000 mortgage on this property, so you could pay, doing math at 4:30 in the morning, 4:45 in the morning off the top of my head, you're going to pay $20,000, $30,000 a year in interest if that's financed over 30 years. So that's a big difference in terms of deductions. Here's the other thing. So let's say that you own 10 houses and over 5 years they go up in value a total of $50,000. And the debt on them gets reduced a total of $50,000. So you've now got $100,000 in additional equity in those properties. So you can take $20,000, you can borrow $20,000 against those properties and distribute that money, and that's not a taxable event. So if I want to pay debt on something, rather than just earning the money and paying the debt, I earn the money, and this is Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki, if you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he'll say, look, if I wanted to buy a car, I don't buy the car. Let's say I want to buy a Cadillac Escalade, okay, $80,000, $90,000. I don't go buy an $80,000, $90,000 car. I go buy an $80,000, $90,000 house, and then I rent it, and then the renters pay my car payment. You have other people pay your debt, which makes you a bank. So if I have debt that I want to deal with, rather than just earning the money and paying off the debt, earn the money, put it into the corporation, have the corporation invest in a property, then take debt on the property, distribute that money, and that's not a taxable event. And as you build up properties over time and you get equity in those properties, then you take debt against those and distribute it, and you're getting income and you don't pay any taxes on it. See, one of the things to realize is you got to learn, how the rich deal with taxes. And how they deal with taxes is they hire good lawyers and accountants and they don't pay them. That's Warren Buffett pointed out that his tax liability was 15%, but his assistant's tax liability was 40%. And he said, and the only reason my tax liability is 15% is because I choose it to be. He said, I can do all of my living and live all that I want using debt and have it paid off at my death and never pay a dime in taxes. But having a corporation that invests in property will give you all kinds of flexibility in that regard. So you could also do it in 401ks and IRAs. I mean, you could have the corporation place money into a 401k and IRA for you. The advantage there is, as the corporation starts to have income, you could take that income, put it into a 401k, IRA, and then it's deductible towards that income. So there would be a tax advantage. The bad part about putting it into 401k or IRA is you get no cash flow, right? But again, it's another way to offset income and to get money into another investment vehicle. So again, if you own those 10 pieces of property and over 5 years you get an additional $100,000 in equity, so then borrow that $100,000, take a distribution and do whatever, but then also take money and then put it into the stock market. So the Grant Cardone approach, which I've only heard him ever say in one video that I listened to, but I really like this approach. This has now become mine, is keep properties at about 60% leveraged. And, like I said, I have several that don't have leverage, ones that I live on. And over time, as debt gets paid down and, potentially properties go up in value, which may or may not happen, then borrow to that 60% and take the difference and put it into the stock market. And so now what you're investing in the stock market is equity in properties that has been created by your renters. So therefore, you're not just taking money and sticking it into the stock market. You're taking profits from property that you've owned and you're putting that into the stock market, and you still own the property and you're still getting the cash flow. When you buy these properties, you want to make sure that you cash flow from the very beginning. You never want to set yourself up in a situation where you're leveraged to the point where you don't cash flow right from the very beginning. You want to cash flow from the first time that you buy the property. And if you keep everything, it used to be that everybody wanted to do stuff in a trust. And again, you decide with your accountant and with your lawyer as to how you want to do it. I like corporations because they just give you a tremendous amount of flexibility. I mean, if you want to go on a trip, you can always go on a trip and take a look at property. You can always be working. Well, now that trip becomes something that you're doing for the business. You can always have a car. You can always have cell phones. You can always expense these things and put yourself in a situation where you're lowering tax liability, but you're not impacting lifestyle, and the money that you're utilizing is being paid for by other people. Other people are paying towards those dollars that you want to use in order to do stuff. So at the end of the day, to me, I think the best idea is to do the buckets. Figure out what buckets you want. Do what Ray Dalio says and even them up at the end of every year. I don't like the idea of keeping the precious metals at home. I know a lot of people like that because they don't trust banks. That makes me nervous to have that much money in the house. I think that that's a bad idea, so I don't do that. Mine are in the safety deposit box. Your choice. A lot of people have big safes in their house, and I know that then they have guns and they have stuff. I don't know. Makes me a little bit nervous. I keep it all in the safety deposit box in the bank. There's really nothing super valuable to come steal in my house. I kind of like that. I like that there isn't anything super great here to come and get. Maybe a couple of watches. That's about it. Then you look at real estate and then at stocks and figure out where you want to be in terms of, are you going to be an active investor or are you going to be a passive investor? Last piece on the real estate. Passive investing in real estate. You can also do the real estate in that fashion. You can become a passive investor and you can invest in individual people. You can go to Grant Cardone and you can go invest in Cardone Capital. You can do it in $100,000 increments, $250,000 increments. He actually just opened up a fund that allow you to invest in $5,000 increments. He's not the only one. There's tons of others. And then there's also REITs, which is a real estate investment trust, is another way to invest. Nothing wrong with any of those things. Here's what you want to make sure. You want to make sure that it's the same person managing or the same group of people managing. You want to make sure you want to look at their properties and make sure that they're not clumped in one area, that they understand. You want to be diversified, right? You want to make sure that their debt is not over 60%. In fact, maybe even a little bit less, but no way more than 60%. And you want to make sure that they survived the last collapse of the world. 2008, 2009, 2010. You want to make sure that they survived that without ever having a margin call. What's a margin call? When you invest in these companies, if all of a sudden they get into trouble in terms of cash flow, they can ask you under the contracts that you signed when you invest in them to put up an additional percentage, usually it's 10%, of the money that you've put in order to help them keep going if they get into a financial crunch. It's called a margin call. You can also have to do it on stocks if you try to hold stocks on margin, which means you don't buy all of the stock, you only buy a percentage of the stock. If the company has ever had a margin call, then I wouldn't invest in the company. That just means that they got too far leveraged. Donald Trump learned this lesson in the late 90s. He got too far leveraged and he got $850,000 into debt. And I saw him speak it was around that time, I saw him speak up in Milwaukee at a Successories event where they had all kinds of speakers. They had Zig Ziglar, they had Tony Robbins was there, Brian Tracy was there. They had all of these speakers. And the president said at that time, he wasn't president yet, but he was over leveraged when everything fell apart in New York. And he learned that he only would go 40% leverage. He wouldn't go to 60%. He would never go above 50%. And then with the last drop that happened in 8, 9, and 10, if you were invested that low, you still had equity. You were still your debt was less than the total value of all the properties, even if they fell 50%. So you were able to still be flexible and maneuver and go buy properties. And so when things fall apart, you can gobble things up. So there's my final thoughts on how to do all that stuff. I love the buckets. I think the buckets are the way to go. When it comes to real estate, are you a builder? Are you a flipper? Or are you an owner? If you're an owner, are you going to be an active owner or a passive owner? If you're an active owner, then you got to decide what it is that you want to own. By the way, last thing, sorry. The real goal, individual houses, again, most real estate guys say that they're good. Grant Cardone says that they're terrible. It's just like anything else. You want to diversify a little bit, right? if you get to the point, if you start doing this, it won't take long where you get to the point where you can buy a multifamily unit. If you buy multifamily units, you want 32 doors. That's the mathematical number that makes it so that all of a sudden you really become a bank and almost a passive investor. At 32 doors, you can hire a full-time manager for the property, and you're put into a situation where you're making cash flow no matter what, even if times get bad. If you buy the right properties, remember, you want people who drive Tahoes. You don't want low-end stuff. You don't want the super high stuff. You want the medium stuff. You want the stuff for the people that have good jobs that are going to keep those jobs. So 32 doors puts you in a spot where the money just simply works. You're going to cash flow kind of no matter what. You're always going to have positive cash flow, and you're going to be in a situation where you've got a manager, so you're not the one dealing with the phone calls at the middle of the night. You simply have to deal with the manager. All right, last thing that I'll give you. It's great stuff, and it works. The real point is whatever the plan is that you're going to pick it and work it. Pick a plan. Pay yourself first. Pay yourself a percentage, at least 10%. If you're young, 10, 20, 30, 40%. My God, by the time you're my age, you'll be so happy that you did that. Pick your vehicle, however you're going to do it, and don't deviate. Be consistent, because like when you're investing in the stock market, you can never time the stock market. Nobody can do that. Everybody that's ever written a book on the stock market, the greatest investors ever, will all tell you, you cannot time the market. You really don't know where it's going to go. So what do? You make yourself buy every quarter or every year or every month, so it forces you to not only buy when it's high, but buy when it's low. The people that invest on a regular basis in the stock market, their returns are triple than the people that just buy and hold, because the people that buy and hold are trying to time the market. Very, very difficult to do. The people that just invest over time, no matter what, I'm going to pay every quarter, I'm going to pay every this, I'm going to pay every that. That means that you're also buying when the market's down, when stocks are on sale. So think about it. You're buying a stock and it's at $10 and you buy 1,000 shares at $10. And the stock goes from $10 to $20 over a period of 3 years to $30. Then it goes back to $15, and then it goes up to $40. Okay, so if you bought 1,000 shares and over 3 years it went to $40, you made $30 a share, right? Now imagine you bought those 1,000 shares over that period of time, but you bought them at different times. So you bought them at 10, you bought them at 20, you bought them at 30, but then you also bought them again at 15, and then on its way up again. Your gain is going to be higher because you didn't just buy them when they were low, you bought them when they were, or you bought them when it dropped also, so you got it at a discount and got that gain again. The other thing that like active managers will do, let's say you own Apple and you decide I don't ever really want to sell Apple, but you're going to buy it over time. If it takes a big drop like we did last March, you can sell it and then rebuy it in the same day, and you just captured a loss for tax purposes. So now you get to deduct that loss on your taxes even though you still own the stock. All kinds of ways to do this and make it so that you get all kinds of advantages. This is how rich people look at money. Poor people try to get a pile of money and then buy an asset that's going to depreciate over time like a car. Rich people buy an asset that's going to pay them money over time, and they use the cash flow from that to buy the things that they want to do. Start thinking in that fashion. Start thinking like rich people. Rich people use, and it's not that you're using somebody else. Everybody needs a place to live. Give them a great place to live. All the properties that I own now, I look at them and my question is, could I live in this property? Would I be willing to live in this property? If the answer is no, then I don't buy it. Anything that I buy, I'm like, I could live here, this place, and then I make it nicer. I want my tenants to be in a place that they stay for a long time, and we take very, very, very good care of them. But I'm looking at a situation where I want to own an asset so that somebody else is paying for the things that I want to do. If I want to get a new car, then I buy an asset so that the people that are paying the rent on that asset, they're paying for the car rather than just throwing the money away at the car. That's the way that rich people think. Buy assets that create cash flow, that potentially increase in value, and constantly do that as opposed to getting a pile of money so you can buy a thing that will decrease in value over time. You want the Louis Vuitton bag? Great. Buy an asset that pays money that'll pay for the Louis Vuitton bag, and then down the road, you can get a bunch of Louis Vuitton bags. If I bought that $90,000 house to pay for that Escalade, well, 10 years later, that Escalade might be gone, but that house is still going to be there. And it's still going to be an asset that may be going up in value, but it's definitely continuing to pay rent. And when you own the properties, do you care if they go up in value? No. If the economy goes bad and the property drops, when the economy goes bad, guess what happens to rents? Rents go up because people can't afford to buy houses because they don't have the same jobs, or the banks get tighter and so they don't lend the money. So you don't really care if the houses go up in value. If you want them to over time, but if they don't, they don't, because the rents are going to stay the same, but the rents are going to go higher. All right, I talked enough. Have a great Saturday, everybody. Tomorrow we're going to be on a new topic. Time to start something new. Hey, we're all in this together. Let's take care of each other. Thanks for watching.